Awesome. So we can call to order the Standing Committee for the Housing and Human Welfare meeting today on June the 15th. We'll start with the roll call. Alderwoman Tierney.
Here.
Alderman Rodriguez.
Here.
And also, I want to just make a motion to amend the agenda to add a conversation in regards to Amendment 19 on tonight's meeting. Do you guys have it, by the way?
Is that?
Is it the putting the police in a contingency?
Yeah, let me just send it again because I don't know if council was on that one that I sent to us. I'm forwarding. I'll forward it now.
Yeah, I just read. I just have Rhonda's email.
Yeah, that's what I saw.
Pretty thorough.
We also have it available if you want us to put it on the screen.
Oh, you have the amendment?
No, from Rhonda.
Oh, I thought you were talking about.
I don't have the amendment. I'm sorry.
I just sent that to you guys then. Okay, but
which one is this?
I sent them 19, the one that I sent you.
Okay. All right, 19.
All right, and so I'll make a motion to amend the agenda and add Amendment 19. I can't do that.
So moved.
Second.
Wait, why did she shake that head?
Yeah, you can. I think.
Is that okay, Takia? You said you were shaking.
So Alderwoman Tierney moved it and Alderman Rodriguez seconded. So that was fine. You couldn't make the motion.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm learning. Number 4 on the agenda, business before the committee. Approval of minutes of the regular meeting.
You have to vote on it before you move on. The approval of the agenda is amended.
I moved
You moved it. You moved to add the amendment, but now you have to move to approve the agenda as amended.
I moved. Time. I moved to approve the agenda as amended.
All in favor? Aye.
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 You need a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Next on the agenda is business before the committee, approval of minutes. The ID-175-20 developmental update from planning and zoning, and ID-176-20 discussion updates on the R19 Affordable Housing Task Force. Oh, I probably should have limited to take that, but it's cool. All right.
We need a motion to approve the minutes.
I motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next item on the agenda, developmental update from planning and zoning on the May 2020 update.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, Dr. Nash.
Hello.
Hello. The most exciting update that we have is that we finalized out all the library permits. So as soon as they're ready to open, we are good to go. And other than that, we received one new project application also on Annapolis Street. We have one currently on Annapolis Street at 106. This one is at 101 to 103. And it's a similar project, same developer, mixed use with commercial or retail on the bottom and residential on above. But other than that, it was kind of a slow month.
Okay, I see 101 Annapolis. Good, more housing.
Yep.
And so while I have you quickly, can I just ask a question about something in my ward?
Sure.
What's the deal with the Kitty Academy? Because, you know, this, again, email has come up in the last week about the housing situation there or something like that. And I know you disputed it, but it continues to come up about it being about it being technically zoned for residential only or something like that.
At Kitty Academy, where they want to do the Kitty Academy?
Yeah.
No, the problem there is that they are having a hard time meeting their Forest Conservation Act requirements. You know, we have the strictest Forest Conservation Act requirements in the state, and it can be very difficult on a site where there is existing forest and they're proposing to take down a lot of trees.
Okay, so this is, I'm just going over this letter that the ARC sent a post. What is this?
So it's the Annapolis
Environmental. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
I don't know if
forest.
it's ARC in the top, but AEC. I'm sorry.
Right. They're addressing the concerns about how the developer had proposed to meet the Forest Conservation Act requirements.
The project pursuant to use in R1B or R3 zone. They better be fit for a development project required for. Okay, so they're making a recommendation. They're not really telling us. Okay. All right.
That's right.
They're just saying that it should be housing, not requiring it. But thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any more questions for Director Nash?
Not for me.
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the discussion / update of R1920 Affordable Housing Task Force. I haven't had an opportunity to get with the Office of Law yet, but we need to extend the dates on this because we were just able to finally secure the financial piece that we were missing to move forward. But we can do that now. And I mean, we have the people lined up. We've collected the applications, put people in groups that they were most interested in based on what was outlined in the legislation. So it's ready to go. We just were waiting on the funding piece, and now I have to fix the dates, but I have to get with Law to do that. That's all on that. Did anybody have questions?
What was the funding piece?
So we had $5,000 for, like outside assistance. And so we weren't, it wasn't originally given to us when it was passed back in February. This is something that's supposed to come now. I'm not sure exactly where they got it from, but we have it now.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks for the update.
Absolutely. Any more questions on that? Awesome. So the next thing on our agenda is a discussion of Amendment 19. So I sent it to you guys if you haven't had a chance yet. But I'll just read what the description is that Finance put in really quick, and then we can open up the floor for discussion. The amendment cuts $110,000 from Police Department contract services for the Anne Arundel County Mobile Crisis Response Team and increases the appropriation in the contingency account, parentheses non-allocated, by $110,000 to support the Office of Community Caring. It also incorporates all previously passed amendments that amendment the same lines in Appendix A. And so what you all seen from Rhonda is what we had discussed over the weekend. And then Rhonda, I haven't had a chance to discuss with you since that, what I discussed with Chief Romali, and also I talked with Jen Corbin, and just, so I think this is just a good opportunity for us to discuss it before us getting to the council today. And also the there will be a counter amendment proposed, which would include what we discussed, Rhonda. So both are still technically on the floor. And so would you like to first explain what we discussed, kind of?
Sure. Thank you, Alderman Gay. I too had a conversation today at length with Chief Romali as well as Deputy Chief Spriggs. I've also talked to City Manager, Mr. Gerald, and looking at the entire situation, and of course, things are very fluid over the past 3 weeks. I looked at it from a situation where we tried to encompass everything we wanted to do. And two of the things that kind of guided me was, number one, looking at our county crisis response team and how they operated with Jen as well as Lieutenant Thomas. And also to look at internally with the police department, how we've taken the issue of domestic violence and we've somewhat used the same model by having Detective Stein and Officer Nancy Moore, who are the experts in that field, to do that. I hope that what I wrote and sent to all of you late last night kind of encapsulates everything. I did talk to Chief Romali, like I said, and Deputy Chief Spriggs today. Their concern probably was what they had indicated to you as far as the crisis response team for the county is. Sergeant Vaden has been temporarily detailed there to find out how their system works. And when she comes back, she will be providing us with what she has learned. I like that system. My thought is that if we combine, if we braid what I call braid the public safety with the public services, the officers will be better equipped and will learn from the public services clinicians. The clinicians will learn from the officers. We want to make sure that we have the best officers. And if there are indications, because we're talking about an abrupt change. And with anything, like I said, if I was told tomorrow I had to start fixing cars, it would be a frightening experience. And so for them, it's changing a culture. But I do believe that we have the golden opportunity to have our police officers kind of showcase their own hidden talents. I know Sergeant Maguez is a professional knitter. And that's something I think we can pursue. I think that's been done in Ward 6 as well with the knitting club that we had. We have other officers who have great talents, and this may be their opportunity to kind of say, you know what, I'm an officer, but I'm also a member of this community. So that might, that I know will help our situation as far as what we want to do. The other thing is too, and I'm looking at TV just like everyone else, and I'm always the glass is half full. We're not like other jurisdictions. Yes, we do have our flaws and imperfections, and it's like having a family. We love our family, but oftentimes we're at odds with our own family members. So that doesn't mean that we basically throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can work with officers, improve their skills and talents, and I think that's a way to go. And I indicated to Alderman Gay that we can have this as a pilot program. We look at it a year after its implementation and see how it's working. And go from there. But I do believe, after talking with our chief of police, as well as our chief and deputy fire department, with our city manager, also communicating with Alderman Gay, Alderwoman Tierney, the mayor, I think we have something that we can definitely be proud of and can be a model for the rest of the country. I want us to be on the map to show how we can really utilize this turbulent and tragic situation and turn it into an opportunity to show that we can work together as clinicians, as police officers, as elected officials, because that's our job and that's what we're supposed to do.
Thanks, Alderman Pindell Charles. Did anyone want to respond or jump in on that? I'll go first to Alderman Rodriguez and then to Alderman Arnett.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alderman Patel Charles, thank you for that update. I just wanted to clarify what the context you just gave is in relation to amendment number 19.
Yes, sir.
No. Okay, great.
Yes.
And so
yes.
I guess since both of you have spoken with fire and maybe police or even Jen Corbin from the Anne Arundel County Crisis Response Team. So is this currently, my understanding is we allocate $110,000 to staff someone from the Annapolis Police Department there, right?
No, what we do is we would hire a clinician or maybe two clinicians, civilians, to work within our police department.
He's saying like we're currently, we got it. Yeah, there's proposed $110,000, and so what that does is it pays for their mobile crisis response team to intervene whenever they're called to respond to an incident in Annapolis.
No, what we would be doing is out of that 110, using $10,000 of that we would use crisis response as a consultant to the city. I don't want to cut totally off our ties with the county crisis response. The other $100,000 would be money that would be part of the police department to hire one or two clinicians to work with our police. Say if they went out on a call and we knew that there needed to be co-responders, it would be police as well as the clinician that would go out, just like akin many ways to what we have in the county. And so that was my expectation. And part of the genesis of this, and Alderwoman Tierney knows about this, she came to me and indicated that we have an issue downtown regarding loitering and the homeless. And she asked me if we could place that possibly on our public safety agenda. And I said, no, I think that would be better served if it would be on housing and human welfare. And this would be a perfect opportunity to show that this is a situation where human welfare is the perfect venue to talk about this. That's why it ended up on Alderman Gay and your agendas today. And I could see where Alderwoman Tierney thought that would be the place to put it. But thinking now over the past, 3 weeks at what has occurred, then I thought this was a better situation. And so that kind of morphed and evolved into me writing the position paper to our colleagues today. So does that kind of answer your question, Alderman Rodriguez?
I think so. I just think maybe, are we getting these amendments crossed right now? Because the number 19 by Alderman Gay takes $110,000 from the police department, contract services for the county mobile response team, and removes it to support the Office of Community Caring. So
what would be Amendment 21 hasn't been completed yet.
So that's what Alderwoman Pandel Charles is talking about.
Yeah, 21 would be the opposing amendment to this. So 19 was drafted, then we had this conversation, and then 20 came about. And so, that's what we're waiting. We'll have that tonight.
So, Alderman Gay, are you then? So the current 19, the original 19, that just moves the 110 from police contract services to response team to community caring. That one's being. Is that? So
that's what we're having this discussion about, because Alderwoman Pandel Charles and I have talked over the weekend. I think we talked Saturday or Friday. Saturday, yeah. And by Saturday, when we had that conversation, I was, in complete agreement with moving into the police department and moving forward with that. And then by Saturday night, we seen in Atlanta another Black man was shot in his back unarmed, and it completely changed my mindset again in thinking that I think this is good that we have this dialogue and deciding how we proceed with this approach to policing, because whether it be under police or whether it be under this separate office, it definitely has to happen where there is we're referring to it as a mental health aspect or component, whatever. there has to just be some sort of social, mental health, some other sphere working with the police to help diffuse a lot of these issues. And I think now where we're having this conversation is it under police or is it under this office? And like I said, when we talked Saturday night, I was like, all right, I'm game to have it under police for a year. And then to see actions like that, it's like, I don't know if it's best to have it under police too. You know, I think that.
And I understand what you're saying, Alderman Gay. And the thing is, put it this way, we haven't seen the end of these situations in other cities. Okay. I'm not going to equate Atlanta to us, nor Minneapolis. In my estimation, we have to do what works best for us. And like I said, this is a pilot. We can do it for a year. We'll see how it works. If it's not working, then we'll set up a separate office. And even at that point, we will have learned much about even how that separate office would need to be set up. At this point, I'd rather keep it where it is. We want our police and our clinicians to learn from each other. And I think this is the perfect opportunity. That's the reason why Sergeant Vaden has gone over to learn how that system works. And that's a nationwide renowned system that Jen and Lieutenant Thomas, Jen Corbin and Lieutenant Thomas have set up. And so that's because this, in my estimation, the way it is going, this isn't an end to our nationwide situation. And we can't let every situation dictate which way we're going to go on any given day. I mean, I've looked at this, and we've all looked at this over the past 3 weeks, and we know it's going to be more. I mean, I hate to say it. I hope I'm totally wrong. I really do. But we can't waffle and whim back and forth depending on what happens in other cities. Now, what I will say is, if this had happened in Annapolis, then it's a whole nother conversation. And so, but this didn't happen in Annapolis. It didn't happen in the state of Maryland. And I think we need to look at we hired, and like I said in the position paper, we hired Chief Jackson for a reason. Number one, we went out and asked people, what do you want? And this is what the people wanted. We have his resume. He went through a total vetting process, an intense interview process. And that's what we determined we were going to, the person we determined we were going to choose. And that was, we in many ways are way, way, way ahead of others in other jurisdictions. And that's why I'm saying, let's try it, as I indicated, as we agreed, that it would be a pilot to see how it goes. If it doesn't work, fine, but at least we have learned and we'll know exactly what the CARES office will look like, because we would have gone through these different steps instead of and I won't say drastically, but jumping from one situation. I was all with that initially when I had indicated that I wanted the Office of Human Services and Violent Prevention. But as time gone on and it has morphed, and we're going to have this mobile health and wellness mobile that's going from community to community, my own perceptions have changed. Dr. Knowledge was the one who came to me and said, Rhonda, no, I don't think the 4-person office will serve you best. I think this mobile unit. And I said, you're absolutely right. Your suggestion is much, much better than mine. And so that's what I'm saying. With that mobile crisis unit, wellness vehicle, along with working with our police and our clinicians, I think it's a win-win. But like I said, if it doesn't work, then we'll know exactly what the CARES office will look like in a year.
So,
I'm sorry, Alderman Rodriguez.
Yeah, thank you, Alderman Pindell-Charles. Because I'm thinking, so under your model, the relationship with the crisis response team would still continue.
As a consultant, on a consultant basis.
Yeah.
Because we're going to have situations that we might still need them to ask their advice and all on.
I mean, I completely agree.
And they will still have that connection. Yeah.
I'm
sorry.
Yeah, I know the work that the crisis response team has done is great around the county, and when it benefits the city, great. Alderman Gay identified maybe like a communication lapse between sometimes the police department and the crisis response unit, as indicated by a member of their team saying, we can only show up to what we know, right, to what we get called to. So if there's some sort of, and I see the chiefs here, like some sort of more formal agreement of when the crisis response team is called, because I definitely agree that the relationship with the crisis response team should continue. And I'm wondering if instead of the 110 being moved from there, because in one of the amendments that we passed in second reader last week was in cutting some of the vacancies from the police department, it saved another extra, I think it was like 140 grand or something. 135. So what are we doing with that money? So if we tie that money into the actual like Office of Community Caring and maintain the relationship with the crisis response team and improving the communication of when they're called in Annapolis, that could be a win-win.
Okay. One thing I want to mention to you at this point, just a bit of history on crisis response. I think it was either 2 or 3 years ago when Tom Andrews was our city manager, because I was getting information from on the street that crisis response, if they had a situation in the county versus the city, now this was before we had any contract, that of course they're going to respond to the county. That's who's paying them. So we needed something. So I went to Mr. Andrews and I said, look, we need to have a contract. We need to pay crisis response because we need put some skin in the game. And so that's what we did. That's where the crisis response, the relationship between crisis and response and the city came into play. It wouldn't have been there, but for the fact that I said, look, we need to put some skin in the game. And so I think it started off as 120, but then maybe it's 110 now. And so that's how we got to that point. And that's when the relationship has been a very good one, where Sergeant Vaden had the ability to go over there, be detailed there temporarily to gain some knowledge over there. But so it's important always to hear how we even got to where we got. So, but no, I understand what you're saying. But I don't want to cut them off at all, because I think they're still necessary. They've got the track record and all that sort of thing.
And I mentioned that to Jen when we spoke, and so $10,000 they would have to get back to us. We discussed that with Adrian Nickler, who is the director of mental health, and she would negotiate a contractual amount of whatever it would be the appropriate amount.
And I'm not saying it has to be 10. We can change it. That's
Alderman Arnett, then Alderman Woman Tierney.
Thank you, Alderman Gay. So I'm having a little trouble connecting all the threads, because the early conversation was with Doug Romali and the fire department, but this is a cut from the police department, and I'm happy to see Chief Jackson on this call. I have heard extremely good reports about the work from this mobile crisis team. So I'm really loath to cut that. I agree with Rhonda and Mark. We ought to learn from them. But I think there's an economy of scale. And the last thing I would add is, we cut an additional $135,000, $140,000. Who knows what's going to happen to all that tonight? But that seems to me to be a good pool of money to go to this Office of Community Caring. And Dewan, when you talked with Sheila this afternoon, and I know she's been searching for grant monies to try to get at least one social worker into this Office of Community Caring. So I don't know why I'm getting an echo here, but anyway, I'd be interested in hearing what Sheila had to say. But it seems like it's beat up on the police department these days. I'd hate to take this, which seems to be a very successful partnership between us and the county, away to embark on something new, and particularly when I think there's other monies that we can talk to the city about throwing at the Office of Community Caring, which, as you know, I strongly support. I'd like to support that, but I wouldn't like to do it at the cost of taking this mobile crisis team away.
So,
Arnett, I'm going to thank you as well for supporting 2 years ago when I proposed the Office of Human Services and Violence Prevention, which is basically the same thing. So thank you so much for your information.
And so, Alderman Arnett, I'll speak to your points really quickly. This amendment is not to discredit the work of the mobile crisis unit for Anne Arundel County. And when I spoke to Jen, that was one of the first things I said, I've heard that it is extremely successful. It works very well in the county, but it does not for our citizens. And she was frank with me and sharing this same opinion that it does not work for our citizens. That the return rate, as you'd say, is that we're getting in Annapolis is not the same as the county would get, because again, we're not. I don't know where that lapse is in police through crisis response and communication, but it's not there. And I think that if we are going to take a gamble with mental health, I think that this is the gamble that we take, and making it a focus and molding it specific to our communities in Annapolis. And who best to do that than us? Who best to do that than a representative that we hire, to get involved and engage in our communities? Crisis response can't be here every day, but there are issues that take place in our communities every day where we need that assistance and where we need that therapy. Again, I caution pairing, and putting everything under police, because at the end of the day, it's still police. And, that's the issue that we have now, is that we bring the police into our communities, and they are our teachers and our community advocates, and they're doing everything that people go to school to get a degree in social work or to get a degree to be a therapist, not to be a police officer / therapist. And so I think that model, again, has been proven to be successful in the county because they actually use the resource daily. And if that is something that we could, mimic here through a different office where that individual every day is focusing on those issues, I think it's important. And now is the time that we take advantage of that, because we don't know if this opportunity will be here next year.
But if I could just respond quickly, I don't think we need to make this an either or. I'm looking for an and. Let's keep and maybe work on getting a better.
But by using this source of funding, we aren't picking either or. Crisis response will still be effective. They'll still have safe stations, as I just talked to her about. So
we have another source of money. So I guess my argument would be keep and improve this mobile crisis and bring other monies that we've now freed up from Monday's action to the Office of Community Caring. Maybe eventually we'll be able to jettison the relationship with the county, but I don't think we're ready now. I think that's the sense that Rhonda's bringing to the table. Let's try a pilot program. I'm saying let's strike out with our own Office of Community Caring Services. We do need to coordinate with all the departments on that. But let's keep this mobile crisis and work on improving any deficiencies there, because we do have other money. So that's all I'm arguing. And I do hope we get to hear from the chief.
Alderman Tierney.
Thank you, Alderman Gay. Let me just back up a little bit. I think it was Wednesday night, Rhonda and I talked, and here's a given. We don't know how much money the police spent, and that's in your email as well, fiscal year 20. We just don't know how much money is there. And
I'm waiting on Mr. Gerald to give me the figure that they have. Yeah.
Right. But what I'm afraid of is I don't want to get boggled down tonight, because this is very fluid. And my understanding from talking to the finance department is that this is simply a dollar allocation, and we are basically putting it in a contingency fund, if you will. I don't think we're pigeonholing where this goes tonight and discussing, is that how much that is, and is that how much this is? This is for the budget to pass tonight that we've allocated, which is our job, $100,000 from X and holding it in Y. That's the way it was explained to me. Am I correct in that?
That's how it's written.
What's that?
That's how it's written.
Cool. Yeah. So that's my point is we don't need to get ahead of ourselves and say, well, we're doing this and doing that because we don't know. And I just want this to pass so we can, you know, get this going. Do you agree, Alderwoman Pendle-Charles?
Yeah, but I think this is a necessary discussion because it has a lot to do with policy, and I'm looking at it from this standpoint. We've had, not necessarily in Annapolis as much as some other places, a disconnect between certain residents and the police. I want us to have improvement, whether it's education and training or whatever it is, with the police department. And my thought is, and having worked with police and trained police for 20 and a half years, they need to actually be able to see the clinician part of it. And unless they're paired, just like Jen Corbin and Lieutenant Thomas are paired, and it would take some tweaking in the city, paired in the county, which has worked extremely successful. That's the model I would like to see, where the police get to see what the clinicians do, the clinicians can see what the police do, the police have an opportunity to utilize some other hidden talents that they have. Like I brought up the example of Sergeant Maguez, and it worked. And Alderman Arnett can attest to this at the Eastport Working Together meetings. We had that collaboration, and we saw that going on. And there was a nice article about Sergeant Maguez in the newspaper about a year or two ago about that. And so I'm looking for that. Okay, go ahead.
I think that is beautiful, and to knit with a child as an officer is, you know, that builds relations, and I think that what we're talking about is like legitimate police reform. And I think that, you know, that stage and, you know, walking the police through, this is how the community police, you know, and those baby steps is, I think that's like, you know, I just think that, you know, pairing this relationship with the officer and a therapist and walking them through how this goes, and this is feelings, and this is what you should be looking for. That is, maybe that is something that the chief should hire or budget for in a separate, you know, in at next year's budget, because I think that's a separate job in itself, walking police through how to identify mental health emotions, or walking on officer how to, you know, interact with individuals. That's something different. I'm looking at this as an opportunity to say, I'm a social worker, I'm a mental health worker, I'm a mental health expert. And every day when I come to work in the city of Annapolis, my job will be to follow up with families or children who I know were in a domestic dispute last night, or my job will be to go follow up with the family of someone who I know was just shot, and continue to follow up with them until I see results, or until they are at a point where they feel pleased or mentally comfortable to move forward. Because this, you know, thing with crisis response, they are great. And, you know, it's a sufficient program, but they aren't helping the family that was of the gentleman that was just murdered in my ward a couple of weeks ago. I know that crisis response knows that, but they can't intervene because they weren't called to the scene, or they weren't, you know, referred to later on or days later. So we need people in-house in our city who realize that and you know, tackle those gaps and those issues. Because if we don't, you know, look at that mental health in a separate sphere of, and not with policemen, if we don't look at it as something that we have to assist with in the city, then these, you know, this crime and the issues would continue to get worse. We're not getting to the core solution. And I think that—
Well, Alderman, you are talking about training. That's exactly what training is to have people, police officers, understand what's going on in their communities. That you've exactly laid it out. And also, when you talk about Jen and Lieutenant Thomas, yes, you're right. It has to go further. And that's exactly what we're talking about here in the city, to taking what they're doing and taking it further. That's all. You're saying exactly what I'm saying.
But I think that I'm saying, in a separate sphere, because I think that we are maybe, I don't know, the year pilot to me to partner up, and I just think we know what the issues are. We know what's going on, and to, you know, like to put the officer with the social worker, it doesn't break away from the stigma of policing. You know, this is still someone in a uniform coming to me, you know, or partnered with someone in a uniform coming to me, and I'm seeing them arrest my father on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday you want me to sit with them and express all my emotional concerns. I think,
but we're all city government. Even if you're talking about police versus another caring communities, we're all still in the city government. Everybody's getting paid out of the same pot.
I feel a lot comfortable talking to whether city government or not to someone in slacks and a t-shirt whose job is to, you know, help me with this issue, as opposed to someone who's walking with a gun and a badge and handcuffs, and, you know, now I'm conflicted on if I feel comfortable talking or resolving my issues with this person, because I don't know if I'm self-incriminating myself. I don't know, you know, what this relationship, where this relationship goes with the officer and this mental health expert. I mean, those are just things that I think, I don't know. I feel like we are again giving time, money, and energy to tweak policing when that can be taken care of separately. We need to be hands-on with our communities and put the money directly there and put the people directly there. Alderman Rodriguez?
Thank you, Alderman Gay. And I mean, I agree with everything you're saying, and also what Alderwoman Pinto-Chavez is saying. And I think we share the same kind of guiding principles. It's just a matter of how to get there. And I mean, I asked myself, like, what's the goal here, right? Like, in my opinion, from what I understand, the goal is to create a separate office similar to a crisis response team, in the sense of staffed perhaps by social workers or counselors, where the city can respond, whether it's with police or otherwise, to the social and mental health challenges, needs around traumatic events like shootings or like arrests or domestic violence. And so I think we can take a major first step there, and by a couple of things, right? Like maintaining the relationship with the Anne Arundel County Crisis Response Team, which is important. As you know, they're doing great work. Perhaps speaking with the chief, there can be a way to cement a memorandum of understanding with them in terms of when they're going to be called, perhaps more proactively, to join officers or to visit families after a scene in Annapolis, given that we're paying $110,000 to staff it and learn from it. So hopefully that can continue and improve based on these conversations. Then we also can create this Office of Community Caring, and with approximately $135,000 or $40,000 that we saved from funding some of the police department vacancies, is using that money to, instead of the 110 from crisis response to Office of Community Caring, you keep the 110 for crisis response today and take the 135, 140, put it in Office of Community Caring, with the goal of hiring and staffing that office with social workers or counselors, and working with, in collaboration with the police and learning from the crisis response team, but being driven by its own mission or agenda. And that ties the funding source there and maintains the relationship with the crisis response team. And I think it's a solid first step to get there. That makes it a little bit more clear for me. I don't know if that makes sense. And with that, I've taken due to the time, just in case we want it for discussion, taking the liberty of just asking Jody if she could draft an amendment to take the 135 or 140 that we saved for the police department to allocate it to the Community Cares Office. Thank you.
That's fine. I think that
could we hear from the chief? I'm very curious to see his take on all of this discussion. I understand your point about the stigma and the current angst, and I've never thought of the Office of Community Caring as being part of the police. I think it needs to coordinate with the police, but I've always thought of it as being separate and also doing more than just crisis intervention. I think it's something that, in my view, eventually will be at least the size of and a lot like the Office of Emergency Management, because Lord knows there's enough work we need to do. And I do have some secondhand knowledge of the work we need to do through my sister, who worked on a lot of situations where she was addressing social issues that came from crisis in families due to all manner of things over and above anything that had to do with policing. So I think this Office of Community Caring Services is much, much bigger than this, but it has to start, and I think this is, again, Rhonda's point, it has to start somewhere. I would like to see it start independent of police, and I would like to see it start with its own money. But I wonder if we couldn't hear from the chief.
Hey, how you doing, Alderman Arnett? How's everything? Good. Yeah, I'm frustrated. I had a nice conversation with Alderwoman Pendell Charles on Saturday, most delightful conversation. And I shared with her a person who I just brought on board to do some of those things that Alderman Gay had proposed. Here's, in my view, what's the matter with the narrative right now in America. We want police reform, and rightfully so. Like with all revolutions, it has to be well thought out, or else it's going to create anarchy. And all this discourse, there's a whole, and I really want the aldermen to listen to me carefully. There's a whole element of people out there who are capitalizing on this movement, who are only thinking about themselves. And I'm talking about the true criminal element. I'm a firm believer, and I said this at my confirmations hearing a year ago. I taught it when I was a sociology professor. I do agree that we need more family, faith-based institutions, and community, and less police, courts, and corrections. But here's the point that I think so many people are missing, that crime is a manifestation of the absence of those three institutions I talked about previously. In other words, we do have a failure that has nothing to do with police, nothing to do with police, a failure in our education system, dysfunctional families, drug addiction, alcoholism, mental illness. I wholeheartedly agree that causes behaviors that are against the law enacted by our legislature. And so I'm hearing all around the country the rhetoric about police reform and defunding police and get rid of police and taking them out of the picture. But nobody's talking to the judiciary. Nobody's talking to the fact that right here in Annapolis, our state capital, we have a legislature that says murder, robbery, rape, and all other sorts of antisocial behaviors are wrong. And I'm going somewhere with this. So when we downsize police and defund positions, get rid of positions, then all I would ask, I would humbly say, be prepared for me and other police chiefs to say, we don't have anything to respond to spikes in crime when the real criminals come out. I'm not talking about people who are victimized by societal failures. I'm talking about those people who wake up every day and they're looking for a bank to rob or a child to molest or a house to break into or revenge killing. And so we got to make sure that public safety to some degree is able to respond to those most violent offenders so that all of us can live safely. And I know that conversation or my rhetoric doesn't bode well for a lot of people, because you've had some people saying, get rid of the police altogether, just defund the entire institution, close the police department down, let the community be responsible for their own public safety. And well, that's not for me to say. I mean, just be prepared to accept responsibility, because everything has consequences. I like the idea of bringing clinical professions. First of all, clinicians and social workers are two different things. Our crisis response team responds to catastrophic incidents, whether it be involving sworn members of the agency, if a police has to use deadly force, or police becomes a victim. There's a lot of police victims out there too. Then when police officers become victims, or citizens become victims, and they provide the type of psychological wraparound services. They don't find a crisis response team are not responsible for finding jobs, getting you off drugs, getting you into vocational training, getting you into college, and all those things you would need to become a productive citizen. So we got to be careful when we use the language and intertwine the two. One of the things that I'm going to do, and it doesn't require me to come to the council for anything, I have an officer, Robert Horn, who did the work in Baltimore. He's doing reentry, and we're out now on the hunt. I posed it to Alderwoman Pendell Charles, as chair of the Public Safety Committee. I said to her a couple of weeks ago that I have 28 slots. We don't have that many now. We're actually going into Robinwood and Harbor House and Bywater and all those communities, Woodside Gardens, and we would have been in Newtown 20 had they not closed it down. And all those areas that have been historically underserved to try to provide wraparound services. And the providers have nothing to do with law enforcement. These are people who, like for example, I'll give you real examples. John Padarakis in Baltimore has, of course, his baking empire, and he's willing to hire people there. We're working with motor vehicles to get people trained and get their CDL license, whether they're convicted or not. They can still get their CDL license and things of that nature, automotive painting, auto mechanics. And then once these people get trained, it's a training program that costs the city of Annapolis nothing. It doesn't come out of the police budget. These are private donations from service providers. And then we have recruiters on standby to help with job placement. And this is under the umbrella of the police department. I talk about it when I go out into the public. I haven't had to ask the council for anything because these are things that we're doing on our own without any assistance from the city of Annapolis. I like to see it grow. I don't know how much we could do with one officer, but we'll do the best that we can. But as I hear this defunding the police, and let's transition the police and take funding, I don't know what that looks like. I'm going to stay in my lane. I can only give you the advice when it's asked of me. But just be mindful of the fact we still have to maintain public safety. And we want to engage our citizens appropriately. We don't want to be rude. We don't want to engage in excessive force. We don't want to have an in-depth, in-custody death like what happened in Minneapolis. But I just want to be mindful. I know there's a revolution in the movement afloat, but none of those things happened in Annapolis. And so what I'm trying to do... That doesn't
mean it won't happen, though.
It doesn't mean it won't happen, but it hasn't happened. And I have to keep my men and women encouraged because we might as well just pack up the police department. And
Chief Jackson, just last year in July, I think weeks before the election, a man was handcuffed and beat in the middle of the streets on camera on Medgar Evers Street. So
right, and I heard about that. That was before.
So it does happen here.
Yeah, but I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But nobody's been killed. Nothing has happened to the degree in the city of Annapolis that's happened in Minneapolis or New York or Ferguson, Missouri, or these other places. I'm not saying we haven't made mistakes, or the agency that I preside over hasn't made mistakes, but we're not those agencies, and I think it's somewhat unfair comparisons to them. I know there needs to be police reform all around the country, but all I ask Alderman respectfully is that you look at what we've done and haven't done. Yeah, there's going to always be incidents, and those incidents, they're dealt with swiftly. Most of the time, those people have been taken off the force, and every profession is going to have their bad apples. I don't care what it is, not just policing. And so it's not for me to say. All I'm saying is my point being that before you defund policing and eliminate positions and call for this revolution, just be prepared to accept the fact that the type of protection that you want to get. We've got about 8 guns off the street since COVID-19 that I know we're going to be using shooting. So I would argue with anybody, we are doing our job, and nobody got brutalized in that process. Nobody's rights were violated. Nobody, and that's the truth. We just did good old-fashioned police work to try to make Ben Ridge Garden safer and Harbor House safer. And nothing happened to anybody. So all I'm saying, if you don't want the police anymore, that's fine. just be prepared to accept responsibility for what happens after that.
But that's not what defunding the police is. And I think that
I know what defunding policing is.
I think that the narrative that if we take away from the highest funded department in the city, a tiny slither, and I think asking Jody, we've taken less than $1 million away from the Annapolis Police Department. Less than $1 million. I think it's like 899,000 or something like that. And to think that less than $1 million would create anarchy in the streets is not true. And
you're mischaracterizing what I'm saying. No, you're mischaracterizing. I know what defunding is. I know it as good as anybody. But I'm saying be careful. I'm also hearing the narrative too. And I'm hearing the narrative about the stigma of policing, which I disagree with. There's no stigma. It's an honorable profession. We've had the unfortunate incidents that's happened in jurisdictions outside of this one, not nearly as horrific. I understand what defunding is, Alderman Gay. I fully understand what you're saying. I'm not misunderstanding that. But there is a certain impact that we have. I argue that we have to just take an overall look and not be hasty in this decision, because the size of this department is based on the law here, the adequate public facilities. It says that we should have the number of positions that we have based on adequate public facilities. There's a whole lot of laws that we enforce that the community may not agree with, and fine, if the community don't agree with it, change it. But we have to be able to respond to those things until the legislature changes. I'm not going to argue with anybody on the merits of policing. I dedicated my life to it. It served me well. I never killed anybody. I know a whole lot of men and women like that.
And I'm not saying that. And now you put me in a compromising position as if
I'm not putting you in a compromising position.
As if I'm opposing the policing, which I'm not. But I think that using funding and rerouting it, because the term defunding is politicized.
I know what you mean.
Rerouting funding, to community programs helps. I mean, stats show that it helps contribute to less crime in communities, to social morale increase. Good things come from that.
I agree. I agree.
So I just don't want it to be perceived as if I oppose
I don't think it should be done at the total expense without a fair evaluation. Without a fair evaluation, you're an elected official. You represent your ward and you represent the constituency. And I'm of the mindset we do what we're told because we do answer to political authority and civilian authority. So I want that to be clear too. But if I'm asking, if you're asking me, and I say this respectfully, as an advisor, I just think that the discourse hasn't been totally well thought out. That's all I'm saying.
Reimagine.
I'm not saying so.
And the very conversation we're having between Alderman Gay and Police Chief Jackson is the very reason why I said we need to braid these services so we can better understand. This is your perfect example. Perfect example in reimagining. You all have indicated to me why we need to braid these services within the police department, where the clinicians work with the public services and the police work on public safety, so we can better understand each other. You all have proven my point perfectly. Thank you.
I think that we have completely not proven the point. We've proven that police are still firm behind policing as they should be, and the community is still saying we need other solutions. Alderman Rodriguez?
Thank you, Alderman Gay. Yeah, I wholeheartently agree with you. I want to clarify, as Alderman Gay said, and because the way I understood your remarks, Chief, was you're equating defunding with abolishing the police. So there are two completely separate things.
No, sir, I'm not doing that. I'm not saying
that's what it sounded like. And I do take respectfully, Chief, issue with the fact that you're suggesting that by removing $140,000 from vacant positions that have never been filled in the last however many years, out of an $18+ million budget, is going to create anarchy and revolution where people are capitalizing on it. And I think people are justified angry. Excuse me, let me finish.
Okay. But that's not what I'm saying, though. Let me get that in there, because I don't want to be mischaracterized. That's not what I'm saying.
And then saying that, you know what, like almost threatening that maybe we're just going to close shop and like walk away. So if people realize they need the police. That no one's saying that police isn't a necessary component of a safe community. It's integral. But I think we can also all agree that the police department go above and beyond what they, like teachers, what they normally do. They take in the role of social worker, of counselor, of clinician. They're doing all this above and beyond just their, and that takes away a lot of emotional resiliency and time from dedicating that into, like what you were saying, the real crime, the violent crimes, the ones that should be targeted and prevented and thoroughly investigated. And because the other pillars of society, of a healthy community, like access to education, to social services, to food security, to environmental justice, those aren't being funded up to par. And so all this is doing is,
but maybe I need to have another conversation. But I'm not saying that. I get frustrated.
$140,000 that we're taking from defunding a few vacancies from the police department that haven't been filled in the last X number of years, and creating an office that serves the community the way they're asking in terms of, helping people navigate the services that city and county offer that are there, that a lot of the issues in the community, especially in our underserved or marginalized communities, is a lack of access to information and services. So view this community care office proactively being city navigators and social workers and caseworkers and or whatever, taking a lot of that work that the police and teachers know to do day to day right now, but where their energies could be focused differently. So I don't see, this isn't, no one's attacking the Annapolis Police Department. We have one of the more welcoming communities here in Annapolis. We're lucky with the Annapolis Police. No one's saying abolish the police department. No one's suggesting that. Literally, this is about $140,000, $110,000. And the fact that we can't have a constructive perhaps dialogue, and of course, there should be a constructive and active dialogue with the police department and with other agencies. I don't think it should be police driven.
But you're taking parts of, and that's what I take umbrage with. You're taking parts of what I'm saying, Alderman, and you're not listening to me carefully. I said transition. First of all, this vacancy thing is a myth because it rotates. We may maintain 8 or 10 vacancies, but nothing's firm. We have police officers who quit. We have to terminate police officers for bad behavior. We have to police officers retire. So when you look at vacancies, they're not vacancies that we haven't filled. It's something that's constantly in motion, And so if you're listening to me, all I'm saying is that amidst this revolution, do what you want. But if you're going to ask me, I only can give you the best answer that I can. We're not as plentiful. We're not as well stocked as a lot of people believe. But no matter what I say to the council or what I say publicly to the community, we don't have as much as you think we have. And so I'm not grappling over $135,000. What I am talking about, and what I do take umbrage with, is that this is not well thought out. I understand what defunding is. I was a college professor for 15 years, and that's not the first time, believe it or not, that this term defunding policing has come up. I do believe that we need to take a social approach to crime. I believe that crime is only a manifestation of lack of social investment that the police have nothing to do with. All I'm saying, and then I'll shut up, is that we got to make sure we transition this properly. We don't do it all in one swoosh, and then be prepared for the fallout if it occurs. That's all I'm saying. And I agree with Alderwoman Pendell Charles. There needs to be a sitting down so we understand both sides. I would be a weak leader if I didn't defend this department. We need as much as we can get to deal with what we have to deal with. We do have too many guns in the city. We do have neighborhoods that are more violent than others. And I'm not saying the only approach should be arrest and incarceration, but we have to respond to it. And so before you take positions from us, I think we need to sit down. I know we've been amid this COVID-19 pandemic and we're doing everything Zoom, but we need to sit down and lay everything out in a more comprehensive way. That's all I'm saying. And whatever your decision is to do politically, then just do it. But be prepared to deal with the fallout that results from it, and then not point the fingers at public safety when crime goes up and all these other things happen, because it sounds good. A lot of times what sounds good theoretically is not always the same thing when you apply it. And I'm hearing a lot of theory, but I'm not hearing a lot of what practical application is going to look like. So I agree with Pendel Charles that we try certain things. And if these theories don't work once we test them, then we try something else. But I'm hearing an all or nothing proposition.
That's why Alderman Gay and I agreed on a pilot program. The other thing is too, Alderman Gay, I want to ask you a question. I know you've been on the bandwagon for adequate public facilities and that we needed to enlarge our police department based on that. Where do you see yourself in all of this during this conversation?
Absolutely. And I'm glad, as I mentioned in other meetings, I think that here's how we get around that fix with the adequate public facilities. And if your option is to go forward, and again, I think that's where we stand, is that what the option would be. And I talked about this with David as well. What is a police officer then? What is defined as a police officer? Because as Alderman Rodriguez pointed out, since I've been here, at least, there's always been there's 10 vacancies. So then what do we transform those vacancies into? What acts or what would be defined in as the police? Who would fill that role then? If we have to fill up to capacity? I necessarily, honestly, I mean, again, I'm not a police officer. I'm not seeing what the hustle on the other side, but I mean, right now we're at 114, and I think things are, I don't want to speak operating fine within the department. I don't want to speak for the chief. I'll let him answer that. Alderman Arnett.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. 3 points. One, just because the positions are vacant doesn't mean we're not spending the money for those positions, because they require extra overtime. And usually all of the money for those positions, once appropriated, gets repurposed for overtime and other things, because the officers have to be on the street, shifts have to be filled. So let's not think that 14 positions is idle money. It gets used, and it gets used largely by the police department because they have to get officers on the street. Second point, I really do think that we have to not make this an either or. There are other funds that we can use to get this Office of Community Character up and off the ground. So let's not have these battle lines, which are not very productive. And finally, I think I'm going to have to go take a nap because it looks like the company is going to run long tonight.
One thing I want to mention, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 council people here. And if we're talking about what Alderman Arnett is saying about it's not an either or, it's an and, do we have 5 votes here to vote for both amendments 19 and 20 plus 21 and 22? Because if we do, we can end this conversation right now. Now, the other thing of it is, if we have 5 votes, then I'm not saying we don't worry about our other colleagues, because we do. But we can move on this thing tonight pretty swiftly. We can take and you know, this is a productive conversation, because this is a conversation that's going on around nationwide. But I just definitely do not want to lump us into what everybody else around the country is doing or talking about. Annapolis is different. It's got its flaws. It's got its frailties. It's got its imperfections, just like the rest of us personally. But we got ours too, okay? But we cannot just all of a sudden jump from one thing to another. We cannot do that, because then it's hard to retreat. And so that's why I'm saying the pilot is what I'm for. Alderman Gay said yes. If we want to do this Karen office thing, fine with me, but we just going to have to, and we can get the job done. The police chief has indicated to us he's got this, what we're going to find a better name, but reentry program. And Mr. Ajayi in the mayor's office, Councilwoman Lisa Ravian and I have gone down to Deal and other places. We're talking to vocational trades union people to bring trades into. So all of this is one big composition. It's not Alderman Gay. Am I all wrong? I'm all with.
No,
Tell me.
I'm not saying that you're all wrong. It's just that. Listen, look. to completely write off, you know, like, I just think that this idea that overnight policing and in this partnership and everything, like over this year, that it would change, and that and this idea that we're so much different from everyone from all these other cities. It's not true, because I'm pretty sure before Minneapolis had their incident, they were thinking, "Oh, our police department is the best in the city."
You can call me Pollyanna, because that's what I am. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that it will work. No, we are not like Atlanta. We're not like Baltimore City. Okay, I was there for 20 and a half years. We're not like them. Okay, we're not like DC. We're not like Atlanta.
So Rhonda, when is the move forward with this? And then like I said, turn on the TV and
it's going to happen. It's going to keep happening. It's going to keep happening. I hope it doesn't.
But why are we to believe that if we stay with an archaic model of policing, which by the way, Chief Jackson, you know, when we confirmed when he came in with a broad scope of community policing change, and
you're saying what I'm proposing is archaic. Is that what you're saying? That's archaic. Well, if what we're doing is archaic, so is what the county is doing. That's archaic too. And I take disrespect to saying my proposal is archaic. When Saturday, it wasn't. It wasn't.
I didn't say it was. No. I said if we continue with an archaic model. I didn't say your proposal was archaic.
We're not. None of this is archaic. Whether it's the caring communities or whether it's braiding the resources. None of it's archaic. We've never done it before. But what has gone on lately dictates that we change what we do. Otherwise, it's no point in us being here. We'll just keep on doing the same thing over and over. And that's all insanity. And I don't think anybody up here is insane.
We'll, like, as you mentioned, you know, it's a long night. Everybody has to get ready for...
I'm up for it.
Yeah, and I just want to, again, make sure that Jody has all the proper amendments out. Everybody has their piece in. I mean, I don't even intend to vote yes for the budget in its entirety if our communities are not represented. Well, I'll speak for myself. If my community is not represented, if I don't feel that funding is being put in the appropriate places to speak to the issues. And, you know, if I'm being a little bit too aggressive in my first budget by trying to get, I mean, we're $300,000, $400,000 to solve some community issues, then so be it. But I mean, that's just kind of how I'm rolling at this point, just because it is, I think now is the time to make the necessary changes while everybody is on board. We were all on board at the marches a couple of weeks ago, but I guess it's a different tune here.
Call me Pollyanna. I'm always looking at the glass half full. I'm Pollyanna and I'm hopeful. Accuse me of being Pollyanna because that's what I am. I am who I am.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Yeah, I think, if I'm on mute, I think if you asked each of us, we'd probably each have a different definition of what defunding is. And I think that's a fundamental problem here. I mean, is it taking money away? Is it reallocation? Is it reimagining? Is it, reforming? And it has, I mean, we all got 100 emails this morning. And I think the thought with those emails was more reforming, so this is tough because that's why I said, let's not try to pigeonhole this because it's a fluid conversation. I just want the money to go into community. I don't want it to fail. But yeah, that's the whole thing. It doesn't have it. There's like a lot of different definitions for it. And I think the chief, not talking for him, is I think he was addressing like you're taking everything away from us. You're defunding us. I mean, I'm not putting words in his mouth, but that's the impression I got from the chiefs. Yeah, he's nodding his head.
Ellie, out of a $21 million budget, we barely scraped $1 million.
Yeah. No, that's what I mean. This is a no-brainer for me to allocate the money. Yeah. Yeah. And there might be more. I just don't. I think this is we have to start with a pilot, like Alderman Pendles-Charles said, and be successful, be a role model for other cities.
Any closing comments? Does someone make a motion to adjourn?
I love you all.
Love, like,
That's my closing comment.
I second.
Okay, this was just a warm up for tonight.
That's all right.
I'm afraid of.
I'm good.
Thank you for the lively discussion, everyone.
Thank you.
So we still haven't. Is someone make a motion to adjourn?
Oh, I did.
Okay.
Oh, okay, she seconded.
Oh, wait, Alderman Gay, can I be a co-sponsor of 19 at least? The 130,000? I don't know how that works. I'll ask Takia.
Yeah, or Jackie, yeah.
Yeah.
And so are you still the co-sponsor for 20 as well? 21, Alderwoman Tierney?
I'm confused with the numbers. 19, 20, and 20.
19 and 20. I'm 21 and 22. So
Those are the ones
I go with Alderman Arnett. I mean, we can have an and. We don't have to have an either or.
Right. But when are we getting 21 and 22? I'm just getting.
I guess it's coming.
Thanks to Dewan with 19 and 20.
Well, Takia, put me down for the $130,000. I think it's.
What are 21 and 22?
Just what I've explained in the position paper that I sent.
Okay. All right.
The 100 get 10 to crisis response and use the 100 embedded into braided with the police, public service, and public safety. That's basically what it is.
Just so you'll know, I'm not in favor of taking away money from the mobile crisis. I am in favor of giving money to the Office of Community Caring and to a pilot and to any of these other enhancements that we are thinking about. I agree with.
Well, that is the pilot. That is the pilot. 21 and 22 is the pilot.
Now is the time to start. Not next week, not next month, not after the budget. Now is the time to start. We never get reforms if we say, let's wait until after the budget's done. So now is the time to get these things off the ground. We do have to have an in-depth discussion of rethinking policing across the country and in our city too. And I look forward to those discussions. I agree with Chief Jackson. They need to be thoughtful and not precipitous, but they do have to happen.
21 and 22 are the pilot, is the pilot, Alderman Arnett.
So we're not immune to bad things happening. It's just we're waiting our turn. And
I'm just not sure how you tweak policing by coupling it with policing. I mean,
I didn't say I was tweaking it. I said we were braiding services, public safety services, and public. What did I say? Public safety and can't remember. Public safety services and I can't remember. But anyway, braiding those two sets of services. I didn't say anything about coupling. And even you mentioned the other day about putting them under. I said I didn't want to use the word under. They're with. It's a with and not an under.
Okay, well, I'm going to go work on amendments 41 and 42.
All right, we got to take a vote. We haven't even taken a vote on the all in favor.
Well, are we voting on recommending
the adjournment?
I think. Oh, on the adjournment. Okay, yeah.
All in favor.
Aye.
Opposed. Awesome.
See y'all later.
2007.
Thank you.